The letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was printed on crisp, expensive paper with the embossed logo of the Cypress Lane Homeowners Association. Martin held it like it was a dead thing, his knuckles white. "Another one?" Sarah asked, coming into the kitchen, her gardening gloves still on. She'd been lovingly tending to her heirloom tomato plants, the ones she'd started from seed in little pots on their windowsill. Wordlessly, Martin handed it over. Sarah's smile faded as she read, "Violation notice, Code 12 for unapproved flora. The vegetable plants located in the front yard bed are not in compliance with the HOA's approved ornamental plant list. See Appendix C12. You have 7 days to remove the non-conforming vegetation or a fine of $100 per day will be levied. Additionally, the mulch around the oak tree has been deemed an incorrect shade of brown. Please rectify. Sincerely, Bill Henderson, HOA President." Sarah let the paper fall onto the granite countertop they'd saved for 3 years to install. An incorrect shade of brown. Her voice was dangerously quiet. "My tomatoes are non-conforming vegetation." This wasn't the first time. It was the 10th notice this year. Their mailbox had been 2 inches too low. Their holiday wreath had been hung a day too early. Martin's prized vintage Mustang, which he kept in pristine condition, was deemed a visual nuisance for being parked in his own driveway for more than 48 hours. Bill Henderson, their retired neighbor turned tyrant, ruled Cypress Lane with a binder full of bylaws and a smug, unshakable satisfaction. He patrolled the neighborhood in his golf cart, tablet in hand, documenting infractions with the zeal of a secret police officer. "That's it," Martin said, his voice low and steady. "I'm done asking. I'm done appealing. We play by his rules now." Sarah looked at him, a flicker of the man she'd married, the clever, determined journalist who'd taken on City Hall before burnout led him to acquire TP, a job reigniting in his eyes. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Martin said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "that every dictator has a weakness. Ours just happens to be a desperate, pathological need for control, and we're about to give him more than he can handle." Their campaign began not with a bang, but with a whisper. Phase 1, perfect compliance. They became the model homeowners. Martin measured their mailbox post to the millimeter. Sarah replaced her tomato plants with the most bland, approved begonias from the HOA's list. They painted their fence a week before the scheduled repainting was even due, using the exact brand and color code specified. They attended the next HOA meeting, held in Henderson's perfectly manicured living room. They didn't complain. They praised. They complimented Bill on his leadership, on the neighborhood's pristine beauty. They voted aye on every new, absurd bylaw proposal mandating that all garbage cans be facing exactly north on pickup days, that holiday light bulbs must not exceed a specific wattage and Kelvin temperature. Bill preened, suspecting nothing. His other neighbors, a weary bunch who had long ago given up fighting, looked at Martin and Sarah with a mixture of confusion and betrayal. But at home, Martin's office became a war room. Sarah, a research librarian, put her skills to work. They studied the HOA's covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the CC and RS, until they knew them better than Bill did. They discovered obscure, never enforced rules buried in the paperwork. Phase 2, malicious obedience. Martin started parking his Mustang in the driveway. Exactly every 47 hours and 59 minutes, he would move it 6 inches forward, then 6 inches back. Technically, it was never stationary for 48 hours. Bill would screech to a halt in his golf cart, tablet ready, only to fume impotently as Martin waved from the porch, a stopwatch in his hand. Sarah, inspired, planted a new garden. Not vegetables. Weeds. But not just any weeds. She planted dandelions, chickweed, and clover, all of which were inexplicably on the approved ornamental plant list because some long ago board member had thought they sounded quaint. She let them grow, wild and unkempt, a sprawling, ugly mess that was, by the sacred bylaws, perfectly legal. Bill's eye began to twitch. The perfectly ordered world of Cypress Lane was developing a chaotic, law-abiding rash. But this was just the irritation. The real plan was deeper. Martin had discovered the motherlode, a bylaw stating that any homeowner could call for a special meeting to propose new community initiatives, provided they had a petition signed by 20% of the residents. Martin and Sarah went door to door, not to complain, but to recruit. They spoke to the Millers, who'd been fined for their daughter's pink bicycle left on the lawn. They spoke to Mr. Gable, who'd been forced to remove the ramp head built for his aging Labrador. They whispered of a way to fight back without breaking a single rule. They got their signatures. The special meeting was called. Bill Henderson sat at the head of his dining room table, a skeptical look on his face. "What is this community initiative, Martin? Let's not waste time." Martin stood, looking every bit the humble, compliant homeowner. "Thank you, Bill. As we all know, the beauty of Cypress Lane is its #1 asset, and nothing maintains that beauty like our clear, fair, and comprehensive governing documents." Bill nodded, smug. "However," Martin continued, "I feel there's room for improvement, for more specificity. Ambiguity is the enemy of compliance. So, I'd like to propose a new bylaw, the Curb Appeal Clarification and Enhancement Act." He handed out packets. Sarah had designed them to look exactly like official HOA documents. For instance, Martin said, lawn grass. Currently, it must be kept under 2 inches. My proposal mandates it be kept between 1.75 and 1.85 inches. We must be precise. A murmur went through the room, and they approved white for trim. Too vague. I propose we specify Benjamin Moore White Dove in eggshell finish only. It included the PMS and RGB color codes for digital reference. Bill's smugness was fading, replaced by confusion. Furthermore, Martin said, his voice gaining a rhythmic, relentless momentum, I propose we regulate the acceptable breeds of dog that may walk on the community lawns, non-shedding breeds only, to prevent fur contamination. I also have a clause about the decibel level of children's laughter during quiet hours, and a detailed chart on the aerodynamic properties of approved frisbees to prevent them from straying into other yards. He went on for 20 minutes. He proposed regulating the brand of coffee that could be brewed on outdoor patios to prevent inconsistent aromas, the required thread count of outdoor furniture cushions, and a mandatory daily leaf count for each tree, with variances requiring a 3-form application. The room was silent. The other homeowners were trying desperately not to laugh. Bill Henderson was pale. He saw where this was going. He was looking at a future where his entire life would be consumed by measuring grass blades and auditing laundry detergent brands. This is absurd. Bill finally spluttered. Martin feigned shock. Absurd. Bill, it's about preserving property values. It's about standards. You taught us that. In just following the example of excellence you've set, I move we vote on these new bylaws immediately. A chorus of aye rang out from the gathered neighbors, their voices thick with barely suppressed glee. Bill was outmaneuvered. He was a prisoner of his own ideology. To vote against it would be to admit his own rules were absurd. To vote for it would be to create a hell of his own making. He voted nay. The rest voted aye. The motion passed. The reign of terror began. But now Martin and Sarah were the architects. They enforced the new bylaws with robotic precision. They presented Bill with a notice that the stitching on the seams of his golf cart's canopy was fraying beyond the approved standard. They measured the reflectance of his windows and found them too glossy. They issued him a fine because the scent of his barbecue on a Sunday evening was identified as hickory smoke, which was not on the list of approved weekend aromas Appendix G. The neighborhood, following Martin and Sarah's lead, embraced the new order with terrifying literalism. They called emergency meetings to debate the reflective properties of different snail slime trails on sidewalks. They formed a subcommittee to analyze the aerodynamic inefficiency of Bill's own roof tiles. Bill Henderson's life became a waking nightmare of petty violations, endless complaints, and bureaucratic hell. His golf cart sat idle, its canopy violating code. His house, once his pride and joy, was a constant source of felonies against the bylaws he himself had championed. He was drowning in a sea of paperwork and absurdity. The final blow came at the next annual meeting. Martin nominated a new president, citing Bill's repeated and blatant disregard for the community's standards. The vote was unanimous. As the meeting adjourned, the new HOA president, Martin, walked over to the defeated Bill, who was slumped in his chair. "It was never about the tomatoes, Bill," Martin said quietly, so only he could hear. "It was about our home. You confused a neighborhood for a spreadsheet. You treated people like line items. All we did was show you what that world really looks like." The next day, a for sale sign went up in front of Bill Henderson's house. It was 2 inches too tall and the wrong shade of white. Martin and Sarah, as the new board, immediately issued a violation notice. They let it pile up. 6 months later, a new family moved in. They had a noisy dog, a brightly painted playhouse for their kids in the backyard, and a messy, wonderful, vibrant energy. On their first day, Sarah brought them a pie. Martin helped them unload a box. The new neighbor looked at the pristine streets, a little nervous. "So, the HOA here, is it pretty strict?" Martin and Sarah shared a smile. "No," Martin said, clapping the man on the shoulder. "Not anymore. We believe a home is made by the people inside it, not the rules around it. Welcome to the neighborhood." And for the first time in a long time, on Cypress Lane, that was the truth.